Think your 401k is building your retirement. You're actually funding Wall Street's present, completely free. Every month when that deduction hits your paycheck, you're making an interest-free loan to Wall Street for 40 years. The 401k scam is the largest wealth transfer scheme ever created, and you've been told it's financial security. In 1978, a quiet tax code change transformed retirement from guaranteed pensions to a retirement trap you can't escape. Your money is locked with massive penalties, but Wall Street uses it freely right now to leverage positions 50 times over. Hidden fees will eat 40% of your wealth. Inflation will destroy another half. This is asymmetric liquidity by design. The system operates exactly like organized crime: territorial control, forced tribute, regulatory capture, and legal protection. In 2008, you lost 30% of your savings. Wall Street executives got record bonuses from your tax dollars. But there are real alternatives, financial independence strategies that work for you now, not in 40 years when it's too late. In the next 20 minutes, I'll show you how to escape the 401k system and build actual wealth on your terms. Hit subscribe because this is the truth they don't want you to know. Let's expose the retirement system together. Here's how Wall Street turns your retirement into their personal bank account.
Do you think you're saving for retirement? You're not. Every month when that 401k deduction hits your paycheck, you're actually making an interest-free loan to Wall Street for 40 years and paying them fees for the privilege. Have you ever wondered what's really happening to your money the second it leaves your hands? Here's what the financial industry will never tell you. Your 401k isn't a savings account. It's the largest wealth transfer mechanism ever created in American finance. Right now, while you wait decades to touch your money, Wall Street is using it today, leveraging it 20, 30, 50 times over, generating massive returns, and you're getting exactly 0% interest on the capital they're borrowing from you. Think about this. Imagine someone asks to borrow your car for 40 years. They'll use it daily to run their business and make money. But you'll still pay the insurance, the maintenance, all the repairs. You won't receive a single dollar in rent. And if you need your car back early, massive penalty. You'd call them insane. Yet that's precisely how your 401k works. Except we've been trained to call it financial responsibility instead of financial exploitation. The retirement industry spent decades making you feel empowered while trapping your wealth in their system. They use words like tax-advantaged and compound growth and long-term thinking. But strip away the marketing and look at the mechanics. Your money gets locked down with severe penalties, while Wall Street uses that trapped capital as free leverage for speculation and profit. They're not your partner, you're their fuel. You might be thinking, but my balance grows, doesn't it? Yes, but at what cost? What I'm about to show you will permanently change how you see retirement. Those returns you're earning, a fraction of what Wall Street makes with your money. Those small fees, they'll devour 30 to 40% of your wealth over 40 years. And inflation? It's silently destroying the purchasing power of every dollar you're locking away, guaranteeing that your $1 million retirement will feel like pocket change when you finally get permission to use it. This isn't conspiracy, this is architecture. In the late 1970s, the entire retirement system was redesigned to serve institutional interests under the disguise of giving you control. Your parents had pensions, guaranteed income for life where companies bore the risk. You have a 401k where all the risk sits on your shoulders. That shift wasn't an accident. It was financial engineering that transferred trillions in corporate obligations directly onto working Americans while convincing them it was freedom. What you're about to discover isn't just eye-opening, it's essential. Because once you see how this game actually works, you can't unsee it. And that's when you can finally start making decisions based on reality, instead of the carefully crafted illusion they've been selling you as the American dream. So before we dive into exactly how this trap was engineered, and trust me, once you see it, you'll never look at retirement the same way. I need to ask you something. If what I just shared hit you hard, if you're feeling that uncomfortable knot in your stomach right now, do this. Hit that like button. Here's why it matters. Every like tells YouTube's algorithm this message needs to reach more people. It pushes this video to others who've been fed the same comfortable lies about retirement security. And the financial industry hates that. This isn't about growing a channel. When you like this video, when you subscribe, you're participating in something bigger. You're breaking through the noise of financial advice designed to keep you compliant and quiet. Mainstream financial media won't tell you this because they're funded by the very institutions profiting from your ignorance. Every subscription is a small act of rebellion against a system that needs you in the dark to survive. Drop a comment and tell me, did anyone ever actually explain where your 401k money goes for 40 years? Right, nobody told me, if this is the first time you're hearing the real mechanics. Or tell me, have you ever calculated what your balance will actually buy when you're finally allowed to touch it? I read every comment. Your story matters because it's the story of millions who've been doing the right thing while being systematically separated from their wealth. When you engage here, you're not just talking to me, you're connecting with everyone else who suspected something was broken but didn't have the language to describe it. If you're new here, welcome. This is where we don't accept financial orthodoxy just because everyone else does. Subscribe because every week I'm pulling back another layer of the architecture designed to extract wealth from working people and concentrate it at the top. This is about understanding power, money, and the historical decisions that built the cage we're living in. Your subscription tells me you're ready to see reality, not marketing. That's the community I'm building. People who ask hard questions, think critically, and refuse to be passive in their own financial exploitation. Now let me show you exactly how this trap was built, because understanding the origin changes everything about why it works this way, and who it was really designed to benefit. In 1978, something happened that fundamentally reshaped the American dream of retirement, and most people have no idea it even occurred. No dramatic announcement, no protests, no headlines. Just a quiet amendment to the Internal Revenue Code, Section 401, subsection K. Boring, right? The kind of thing that makes your eyes glaze over. But that single bureaucratic change unleashed the largest wealth concentration mechanism in modern financial history, and you've been living inside its consequences your entire working life. Before 1978, retirement looked completely different. Your parents, your grandparents, they had defined benefit pension plans. Here's what made those fundamentally different. The responsibility for your retirement sat on your employer's shoulders, not yours. Work for a company 20 or 30 years, they promised you a specific monthly payment for life. They figured out the funding. They managed the investments. They bore the risk if markets crashed or people lived longer than expected. You showed up, did your work, and your future was secured by legal obligation. But corporations started seeing pension obligations as a massive problem. Pensions are expensive. Companies have to set aside huge amounts today to pay promises that won't come due for decades. In the competitive 1970s, with inflation running wild and margins squeezed, corporate America desperately wanted out. They needed a transformation that wouldn't look like abandonment. They needed something clever, something that looked like progress while actually transferring all the risk from corporations to individual workers. Enter the 401k. And here's the part nobody tells you. It wasn't even designed to be your primary retirement vehicle. It was supposed to be a supplementary plan for executives, a little tax advantage for highly paid employees to save extra money beyond their guaranteed pensions. But corporations and their advisors quickly realized they'd stumbled onto something brilliant. They could reframe this executive perk as the new retirement system and eliminate pension obligations entirely. Here's the stroke of genius that made it work. They marketed this as empowerment. Don't you want to control your own money? Don't you want freedom to make your own investment decisions? Why should the company manage your future when you can manage it yourself? It was manipulation dressed up as liberation. Think about the psychology. Americans love control, self-determination, independence from institutions. So when corporations said, "We're giving you power over your destiny," it sounded like a good deal. But what they were actually saying was this: we're abandoning our responsibility to secure your future. If the market crashes right before you retire, if you make poor decisions, if you don't save enough, if you live longer than your money lasts, that's all on you. We're out. The risk transferred completely from the entity with resources, expertise, and legal obligations to individual workers who had none of those things. And Wall Street? Absolute glee. Suddenly they had access to something they'd never had before. Trillions of dollars in captive capital that couldn't leave the system. Think about what pension fund managers do. They manage large pools professionally, negotiate fees, move money based on performance, have leverage. But millions of individual workers each managing small 401k accounts. No collective bargaining power. Everyone alone, making isolated decisions, often with minimal financial knowledge. Fees get layered on without scrutiny because they're hidden in expense ratios and administrative costs most people never look at. This was the birth of a system where your money locks down until you're nearly 60. But Wall Street has complete unrestricted access to use that capital however they want during those decades. They're not paying you interest for borrowing your money. They're charging you fees for holding it. And while your capital sits generating modest returns eaten by inflation and fees, those same dollars get leveraged by investment banks and hedge funds to generate returns that are multiples of what you'll ever see. Your 401k became fuel for speculation, mergers, high-frequency trading, every mechanism that concentrates wealth at the top. The data is impossible to ignore. In 1980, 2 years after the 401k was introduced, 60% of private sector workers had defined benefit pensions. By 2020, less than 15%. Meanwhile, money in 401k plans exploded to over $7 trillion. $7 trillion in worker savings, locked away, accessible to Wall Street for speculation, generating fees every year whether accounts grow or not. An extraordinary transfer of wealth and risk over just a few decades, and most people had no idea they were witnessing one of the most consequential economic restructurings in American history. And here's what makes this even more insidious. Once in place, the system became self-reinforcing. Financial advisors, compensated on assets under management, have every incentive to tell you to maximize contributions. Government incentivizes it with tax breaks. Your employer might match, which sounds generous until you realize they're still saving enormous amounts by not funding traditional pensions. The entire infrastructure of financial advice, tax policy, and corporate benefits funnels you into this system. They make you believe it's the only responsible path when it's actually a path that benefits everyone except you. Write in the comments, "I see the trap now." Because once you understand this origin, once you see it was never designed with your interests as the primary concern, everything else makes sense. The pieces fall into place. And that's when we talk about what actually happens to your money during those 40 years it's locked away, and why inflation makes this situation even worse than it appears. Now I want to go even deeper into the mechanics of how this actually works, because understanding the trap intellectually is one thing. Seeing the gears turning is what shifts your perspective. Let's talk about asymmetric liquidity, which is just a fancy way of saying the rules apply differently depending on who you are in the financial system. Here's your reality. You put money in your 401k, and it's locked down tight. Need it before 59 and a half? 10% early withdrawal penalty on top of income taxes. So imagine an emergency. You lose your job for a year. Medical crisis insurance won't cover. Your child needs something critical. You access your 401k, and immediately the government takes 10% as punishment for touching your own money, plus 20 to 30% in income tax depending on your bracket. You're losing 30 to 40% just to access your savings when you need them most. Your side of the equation, complete lockdown with severe penalties. Now, Wall Street side. The moment your contribution hits your account and gets invested, that money becomes instantly available for financial institutions to use however they want. They're not waiting 40 years. They're using it right now, this second. And here's where the real magic happens. They can leverage that money. Your $100,000 sitting in an index fund becomes collateral to borrow $1 million, $2 million, sometimes more depending on the trading type and regulations. Your capital becomes the foundation for a pyramid of borrowed money that generates returns based on the full leveraged amount, not your original contribution. Your money is locked. Their access is unlimited. Let me make this concrete. If Wall Street takes $1 trillion of 401k money and levers it just 10 times, conservative for institutional trading, they're controlling $10 trillion in market positions. Making money on price movements, spreads, high-frequency trades in microseconds, mergers they're financing, corporate debt they're packaging and reselling, all generating returns continuously while you watch your balance update once a day. Seeing modest gains that pale compared to the wealth created using your capital as foundation. Your returns are modest. Their leverage multiplies gains. The behind-the-scenes reality would shock most people. Your money isn't sitting peacefully in a stock portfolio growing slowly. It's being rehypothecated, pledged as collateral for multiple transactions simultaneously, used in complex derivatives trading, funding leveraged buyouts where private equity acquires companies with debt, strips them for parts, walks away with massive profits whether the company survives or dies. Your savings became fuel for financial engineering so complex it would make your head spin. And through all this frenetic activity, all these layers of leverage and speculation, there's a silent killer most people never notice until too late. Fees. You see 1% per year in management fees and think, 1%? That's nothing. Totally reasonable. But that reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of compound mathematics over time. 1% annually over 40 years removes 30 to 40% of your final balance. A fee that seems tiny annually eats nearly half your lifetime wealth accumulation. Your fees compound against you. Their profits compound for them. Here's the math crystal clear. You contribute $500 monthly for 40 years, earning 7% average before fees. Without fees, approximately 1.3 million. Subtract 1% annual fees, 950,000. That 1% took 350,000 from your pocket over 4 decades, and 1% is low end. Many plans have expense ratios, administrative fees, hidden costs pushing total fees to 1.5 or 2%. At 2%, you're losing nearly half your potential wealth to the financial industry. Now imagine explaining this with a banking analogy. Walk into a bank. I want an account where I deposit monthly for 40 years, but I can't withdraw without severe penalties until 4 decades pass. You'll charge fees consuming 1/3 of my money. You'll use my deposits for loans and investments generating your profits while paying me modest returns barely keeping pace with inflation. No rational person would accept those terms presented transparently. But that's essentially a 401k when you strip away marketing and look at actual mechanics. Here's the revelation that changes everything. This isn't a bug, it's the core feature. The 401k was designed, whether intentionally or through financial incentive evolution, to create a massive pool of trapped capital exploited by sophisticated players, while individual workers bore all risk and paid for the privilege. Your money locked, their access unlimited. Your returns modest, their leverage multiplying gains. Your fees compounding against you, their profits compounding for them. A system of wealth extraction masquerading as wealth building. Drop a comment. Asymmetric liquidity. If you're seeing how one-sided this game really is, because what comes next makes it worse. We need to talk about what happens to your money's purchasing power while it's locked away for decades. There's an invisible enemy working against your retirement savings every single day, operating so quietly, so gradually, that most people don't realize the damage until they finally retire and discover their money doesn't go nearly as far as they thought. That enemy is inflation, and it's the final piece that transforms your 401k from questionable deal into outright trap. Here's the harsh truth nobody in the financial industry talks about openly. You're saving dollars from today, but you'll be spending dollars from 2060 or 2065. And those are not the same dollars, not even close. Let's start with concrete numbers that will shift your entire perspective. The historical average inflation rate in the United States over the past century has been around 3% annually. Some decades higher, some lower, but 3% is reasonable long-term average. And here's what 3% annual inflation does to your purchasing power. It cuts it in half approximately every 20 to 25 years. Read that again. Every quarter century, your dollar's value gets sliced in half. A dollar today buys about 50 cents of goods in 25 years. Over a 40-year timeline, standard working career from 25 to 65, your dollar loses 70 to 75% of its purchasing power. Now let's apply this to an actual 401k scenario, because this is where the illusion completely collapses. Imagine you're disciplined, responsible, contributing $1,000 monthly for 40 years straight. You watch your balance grow year after year. After 4 decades, you've put in $480,000 of your own money. Your investments did reasonably well. With compound growth, you're sitting on around 1 million, maybe more. You've joined the millionaire club. You feel like you've made it, done everything right. Then you retire and start trying to actually live on that money. This is where most people realize they've already lost the game. That 1 million in nominal terms, the raw number on your statement, will have purchasing power of somewhere between 250,000 and 300,000 in today's money. All those years of sacrifice, delayed gratification, contributions taken from your paycheck before you even saw them, and the actual real-world value has been decimated by inflation. You thought you were building a comfortable nest egg to maintain your standard of living. Instead, you've got a fraction of what you needed. Now you're facing decisions. Keep working, drastically cut lifestyle, or burn through savings faster than planned and hope you don't live too long. And here's where it gets even more sinister. Those inflation numbers I used are based on the official Consumer Price Index, the CPI, the government's measurement of rising prices. But anyone paying attention to real expenses knows the CPI is manipulated to understate true inflation. The formula has been changed multiple times over decades, specifically to produce lower numbers. Why? Lower inflation means government pays less in Social Security adjustments, issues debt at lower rates, can claim the economy is more stable than it is. The real inflation you experience daily, especially in categories that matter most, healthcare, education, housing, is significantly higher than official numbers suggest. Think about healthcare costs, one of your biggest retirement expenses. Over the past 20 years, healthcare rose at roughly twice the rate of general inflation. College education for your kids or grandkids? Even faster. Housing in desirable areas? Astronomical increases far outpacing the CPI. So when you're planning retirement based on official 3% inflation, but your actual cost of living increases at 5, 6, 7% annually in categories you can't avoid, the gap between what you think you'll need and what you'll actually need becomes a chasm that swallows your financial security whole. This creates devastating double impact, compounding the wealth extraction we've already discussed. Not only are you paying fees consuming 30 to 40% of potential gains, but remaining value is being eroded by inflation faster than you're being told. By the time you access your money, you're looking at purchasing power that might be only 20 to 30% of what you originally put in when adjusted for real inflation. You worked 40 years, sacrificed current consumption to save for future, and ended up with a fraction of what you thought you were building. Now contrast this with who benefits from having access to capital right now, today, in the present moment. When Wall Street uses your locked-up 401k money for investments, acquisitions, trades, leveraged bets, they're using today's dollars at today's value, buying assets right now that will appreciate as inflation continues, acquiring real estate, commodities, companies, productive assets that serve as inflation hedges. While your paper money sits in an account losing purchasing power year after year, they're converting that capital into real things that maintain or increase value in inflation-adjusted terms. They play the game with real assets. You're stuck holding depreciating currency promises. The mentality shift that needs to happen. Time is not neutral when it comes to money in an inflationary system. Having access to capital today is exponentially more valuable than having that same nominal amount 40 years from now. The person or institution deploying capital immediately captures current opportunities, hedges against future inflation, compounds returns in real terms. The person waiting 4 decades to access their capital is guaranteed to lose purchasing power while they wait. Nothing they can do except hope investments outpace inflation enough to compensate, which after fees and taxes becomes increasingly unlikely. This is why the 401k is such a brilliant wealth transfer mechanism from the perspective of those who designed and benefit from it. They convinced you that locking money away for decades was prudent long-term thinking, when in reality, it guaranteed your wealth would erode while theirs compounded. They got you to accept deferred consumption as virtue, while they practiced immediate deployment as strategy. And the final insult, when you reach retirement age realizing your $1 million balance isn't enough to live comfortably, the same financial industry will be there ready to sell you annuities, managed withdrawal plans, reverse mortgages to extract even more fees from whatever remains. Leave a comment. Inflation is theft if you're seeing how this timeline game is rigged against savers and in favor of those controlling capital right now, because understanding this dynamic is crucial to what comes next, how this entire system mirrors the operational structure of organized crime. When you step back and look at how Wall Street operates within the 401k system, the parallels to organized crime become impossible to ignore. And I don't say that as hyperbole or conspiracy theory to shock you. I mean it as serious analytical observation about how power structures extract wealth from populations they control. The mafia operates on simple principles: establish territorial control, eliminate competition, charge tribute for operating within that territory, use complexity and intimidation to prevent resistance, and most importantly, capture the regulatory and legal structures that might otherwise shut you down. Now let me show you how Wall Street has implemented every single one of these strategies, except they've done it with something the mob could never achieve: complete legal legitimacy and government enforcement. Start with territorial control. When the mafia controlled mid-century neighborhoods, residents had no choice about participation. Own a business in their territory, pay protection money. Want to operate? Go through their channels. The 401k system operates on this exact principle of forced participation. Laws are structured, so if you want retirement savings with any tax advantage, you must go through approved intermediaries. You can't just take your paycheck, buy real estate directly, invest in private business, purchase commodities, or do anything that might actually build real wealth without either losing tax benefits entirely or navigating through financial institutions taking their cut at every step. The retirement system was deliberately designed to funnel your money through limited gatekeepers who all charge fees for access. Want to invest in stocks through your 401k? Use the plan administrator your employer chose, who selected from a limited menu of mutual funds, each charging expense ratios, all happening through a custodian charging administrative fees. Layers upon layers of intermediaries, each taking a slice, and you cannot bypass them. Territory legally defined, checkpoints established. You cannot move money through this territory without paying tribute at each gate. And speaking of tribute, the fee structure permeating every aspect of the 401k system. The mafia called it protection money. Pay a percentage of revenue for the privilege of operating in their territory. Wall Street calls it management fees, expense ratios, transaction costs, administrative charges. Same function. You're paying for the privilege of having your own money managed within their system. Just like mob protection rackets, these fees are non-negotiable and unavoidable. You can't opt out, can't refuse to pay and still participate. Fees baked into structure, extracted automatically. Most people don't even realize how much they're paying because the complexity is intentional. This brings us to one of the most important parallels: deliberate complexity and obfuscation to hide true cost. When you read 401k disclosure documents, assuming you bother, you're confronted with dozens of pages of dense financial and legal language designed to confuse rather than clarify. Expense ratios buried in fund prospectuses. Administrative fees described vaguely. Revenue sharing arrangements creating conflicts of interest. 12b1 fees that sound technical but are really marketing costs you're paying for. The entire system is architected to make it nearly impossible for average people to calculate exactly how much they're paying in total fees. Not an accident. Strategy. The more complex and opaque, the less likely people question it or demand better terms. The mafia used fear and violence to maintain compliance. Wall Street uses something potentially more effective. They've captured the very regulatory agencies supposed to protect you from predatory practices. This is regulatory capture, one of the most insidious aspects of modern financial power. The Securities and Exchange Commission, supposed to regulate Wall Street and protect investors, operates as a revolving door with the institutions it's supposed to oversee. Executives from Goldman Sachs, Citigroup, JP Morgan routinely move into high-level SEC positions, spend years writing and enforcing regulations, then move back into private sector with more lucrative positions, having helped shape rules benefiting their future employers. This creates a system where regulators have no incentive to actually constrain the industry they're policing. Every incentive to maintain status quo and protect financial institution interests they'll be working for again in a few years. Regulatory capture so complete the rulemaking process itself has been subordinated to industry interests. And this is where Wall Street achieved something even the most successful organized crime families never could. They've made their wealth extraction system not just legal, but mandatory and government enforced. The mob had to operate in shadows, always at risk of prosecution. Wall Street operates in broad daylight with laws requiring your participation. The revelations become even more stark looking at how crises are handled. During the 2008 financial crisis, millions watched their 401k balances collapse 30 to 40% as markets cratered due to reckless speculation and fraud by major financial institutions. People months from retirement saw life savings evaporate. The dream of comfortable retirement turned into nightmare of working another 5 or 10 years just to recover. And what happened to the executives and traders whose decisions caused this catastrophe? They received taxpayer-funded bailouts and record bonuses. The same year working Americans lost trillions in retirement savings, Wall Street paid out tens of billions in executive compensation. This is the purest expression of how the system works. Gains are privatized. When things go well, financial industry captures profits. Losses are socialized. When things go badly, public bears the cost while the responsible walk away wealthy. It's a protection racket where the people being protected are the ones running it, and the people paying for protection are the ones who get hurt when the system fails. The mafia, for all their ruthlessness, at least didn't pretend they were acting in your best interest. Wall Street has convinced millions this extractive system is actually financial security, that participating is responsible adult behavior, that questioning it marks you as financially unsophisticated. The transformation in understanding when you see these structural parallels is profound. You start recognizing the 401k system isn't broken. It's working exactly as designed, just not for you. The beneficiaries are the same people who designed it, maintain it, regulate it, and profit enormously from your participation. And unlike traditional organized crime, which eventually faces prosecution when too visible and damaging, this legalized version has been so successfully integrated into American life that questioning it seems radical rather than reasonable. Write in the comments, legalized extraction. If you're seeing how this system operates with all the characteristics of organized crime, but with full backing of legal and regulatory authority, because understanding this structure is essential to figuring out what you can actually do about it. So after everything we've uncovered about how this system really works, the question burning in your mind right now is, what do I actually do about this? And I want to be completely honest from the start. You cannot entirely escape this system. It's too deeply embedded in tax law, employment structures, the broader architecture of American finance. But what you can do is stop being the perfect compliant fuel source Wall Street needs you to be. You can make strategic decisions that shift the balance of power, even if just slightly, back in your favor. And most importantly, you can change your entire mindset about what financial security actually means, because the traditional narrative of working 40 years and retiring at 65 was always designed to benefit employers and financial institutions more than you. The first and most crucial step in this transformation is simply consciousness. You need to fundamentally reframe what a 401k actually is in your mind. Stop thinking of it as a savings account. Stop viewing it as your nest egg or security blanket. Start seeing it for what it functionally is, a forced loan you're making to Wall Street for 4 decades, where you bear all the risk, pay fees for the privilege, watch inflation erode the value, and have no access to your capital during the years when you could use it most effectively. Once that mental shift happens, once you truly internalize that understanding, your decisions about how much to contribute and where else to deploy your resources become much clearer. Here's a practical principle that makes sense for most people employed by companies offering 401k matches. Contribute exactly enough to capture the full employer match and not a single dollar more. That employer match is genuinely free money. Immediate return on investment you can't get anywhere else. If your company matches 50 cents on the dollar up to 6% of your salary, then contribute 6% and stop there. Don't let the financial industry or well-meaning but misguided advisors convince you to max out contributions at the legal limit. Every dollar beyond the match that you lock into that 401k is a dollar you're voluntarily removing from your control for decades, subjecting to fees, betting on hope that market returns will exceed inflation enough to make it worthwhile. Instead, take the money you would have contributed beyond the match and diversify it into vehicles giving you more control, more flexibility, more immediate utility. A Roth IRA gives you ability to withdraw your contributions anytime without penalties or taxes. building retirement savings that can also function as emergency fund if needed. You're paying taxes now rather than later, which can be advantageous if you believe tax rates will rise or if you expect your retirement income to remain substantial. Health savings accounts, if you're eligible, offer triple tax advantage, actually superior to 401ks. Contributions are tax deductible, growth is tax-free, withdrawals for qualified medical expenses are tax-free. And since healthcare will be one of your largest retirement expenses anyway, you're building a dedicated fund for that purpose while maintaining much more flexibility than traditional retirement accounts. But here's where the real mindset shift needs to happen, and it's probably the most important principle I'm sharing in this entire video. Stop deferring your entire financial life to some mythical future moment 40 years from now, when you'll suddenly be allowed to enjoy the fruits of your labor. That mentality serves the system, not you. Instead, start thinking about building assets and income streams that serve you right now, today, while also positioning you for long-term security. Invest in developing skills that increase your earning power immediately. Put money into side businesses or income-generating assets like rental properties that produce cash flow you can use today, while also building equity. Create multiple revenue streams rather than betting everything on a single job and a single retirement account you can't touch for decades. The concept of retirement at 65 is itself a relatively recent invention created during the industrial age, when companies needed predictable ways to move older workers out and younger workers in. It was never designed to optimize your personal financial journey or life satisfaction. So instead of accepting that framework as inevitable, start thinking about progressive financial independence. What would it take for you to work because you want to, rather than because you have to? What would it take to have enough income-generating assets that you could downshift to part-time work in your 40s or early 50s? What would it take to build a life where the distinction between work and retirement becomes less relevant because you're engaged in activities you find meaningful that also happen to generate income? This requires a fundamentally different approach to capital allocation. Traditional advice tells you to lock everything away for later. But what if instead you kept more capital liquid and accessible so you could take advantage of opportunities when they arise? Maybe that means maintaining a substantial taxable brokerage account where you can invest in stocks, bonds, or ETFs without any early withdrawal penalties. You lose some tax advantages, yes, but you gain complete flexibility. Access that money if you want to start a business, need to handle an emergency, see an investment opportunity, or simply decide you want to take a year off to travel while you're still young enough to enjoy it. That flexibility has value that doesn't show up in retirement calculators, but matters enormously in real life. Investing in real assets also becomes crucial when you understand the inflation dynamics we discussed earlier. Instead of letting all your wealth accumulate as paper promises in financial accounts, consider putting some into tangible things that maintain value as currencies degrade. Real estate, whether your primary residence without excessive mortgage debt or rental properties generating income, represents real wealth that typically keeps pace with or exceeds inflation. A business you own, even a small one, is a real asset that can generate income and appreciate in value in ways a 401k balance simply cannot match. Skills and knowledge that increase your earning capacity are perhaps the best investment of all because they can't be inflated away and they generate returns immediately rather than decades in the future. There's also a political dimension we can't ignore. As individuals, our ability to restructure the entire retirement system is limited. But collectively, there's enormous power in demanding transparency, accountability, and alternatives. Support politicians and policies requiring clear disclosure of all fees and retirement accounts. Push for regulations eliminating conflicts of interest between plan administrators and fund providers. Advocate for public options for retirement savings that would compete with private sector offerings and potentially drive down fees across the board through competition. The more people who understand how extractive the current system is, the more political will there is to demand something better. These are principles, not a one-size-fits-all prescription. Your situation is unique. Your income, your goals, your risk tolerance, your opportunities. What matters is understanding the fundamental dynamics at play, so you can make informed decisions based on reality rather than marketing. The journey toward actual financial security looks different when you're not playing by rules designed to benefit everyone except you. It requires more active engagement, more learning, more willingness to question conventional wisdom. But the alternative is spending 40 years as an unwitting participant in a wealth transfer system that was never designed with your interests as the primary concern. Drop a comment. Financial independence now. If you're ready to stop deferring your entire life to a distant future and start building real security on your own terms, because understanding these principles changes everything about how you move forward. If you made it all the way to this point, you're not someone who just passively accepts what you're told about money. You're someone who wants to understand how the game is actually played, who the players are, and what your real options look like. That matters. And honestly, it's exactly the kind of mindset this channel is built for. We dig into the architecture of financial systems, the historical decisions that created them, and the power structures that maintain them, not because it's comfortable or easy, but because understanding these things is the only way to make genuinely informed decisions about your own life and wealth. So if this resonated with you, if it challenged something you believed or confirmed something you suspected, hit that subscribe button. Every week I'm breaking down another piece of this puzzle, how central banking really works, the history of financial crises and who profits from them, the mechanisms through which wealth gets systematically extracted from working people and concentrated at the top. This isn't content you'll find on mainstream financial channels because they're too invested in maintaining the narratives that keep the current system running smoothly. Here, we're interested in truth, not marketing. Leave a comment saying, "I made it to the end, so I know you stuck with this whole journey." I genuinely read through the comments, and I love seeing who's engaging with this material seriously. Your presence here, your willingness to think critically about these systems, is what makes this community valuable. We're all figuring this out together, comparing notes, sharing experiences, and building a collective understanding that's stronger than what any of us could develop alone. Hit that like button too, because it tells me this is the kind of content that's landing with people. And it helps YouTube show this to others who are asking the same questions you were asking before you found this video. Every like genuinely makes a difference in getting this perspective in front of more people who need to see it. There's a video right here that goes even deeper into how you can actually start building wealth outside of these traditional systems we've been talking about. Practical strategies that give you more control and less dependency on institutions that don't have your best interests at heart. Click on that and keep this momentum going, because once you start seeing these patterns, there's no going back, and that's exactly where you want to be.